On page 20 of our notes, we are talking about evaluating expressions. So it says, what is an algebraic expression? It is an expression that contains one or more variables. So those are letters that represents numbers. So if you look down in number 1, we have an x and a y. So those are two different variables that represent two different numbers. It's telling us that x is 5 and y is -3. So in order to evaluate the expression, you're going to plug the numbers in for the variables. So we call that substitute. The variables with their given values. So you're going to plug those in. Then you will follow the order of operations to get your final answer. So you might want to remind yourself of our order of operations. Parentheses or any grouping symbols, could be brackets or absolute values as well. Then your exponents, which includes if you have square roots or cubed roots. Multiplication and division, you work left to right, and then the very last thing you should be doing is addition and subtraction, also left to right. I would highly recommend whenever you are multiplying or using exponents to put your numbers in parentheses. So here's what I mean. Sometimes it's taught that you simply rewrite the expression and put parentheses wherever your variables are. So you are taking out the variables and then you're going to replace them with your numbers. So one way to show that you're doing that is to rewrite the problem. Wherever there's variables, the letters, you put parentheses. Then you go back and look. X is 5, so you're going to put the 5 in there, and y is -3. So you have to remember that 7x means you're multiplying, even though there's not a multiplication sign. So 7 times 5 is 35. You can bring down the plus sign. 4 times -3 is -12. So 35 plus -12 gives us 23. Should be our final answer. If you didn't want to use the parentheses, you could do multiplication signs with the dots. 7 times 5 plus 3 times -4. And it would still work even with the multiplication sign. So that's up to you. We're going to do all the odd ones on this video. So we're going to skip down to number 3. It is extremely important for this one because you are squaring a negative number that you absolutely have to put that in parentheses. So you have to do 4 parentheses -2 squared plus 5 parentheses -2. So that time I went ahead and did the parentheses and the substitution all at once. It's whatever you're most comfortable with. But notice this means we have to square -2 first. You don't do 4 times -2, only the m, which in our case is -2, is being squared. So that's 4 times 4. -2 squared is 4. Plus 5 times -2 is -10. So I could rewrite that as 16 minus 10. Again, if you want and can show your work just by crossing it off to put the 4 instead of rewriting it, that's fine. But we should end up with 6 as our final answer. So notice the difference between 3 and 5. In 3, only the m has a squared. In number 5, the a and b are together squared. So this means you have to multiply a times b and then square it. So what that one will look like is we will do parentheses. A is 3 times b, which is 2, squared. So I didn't put them in individual parentheses because that would have looked a little bit yucky. So I just left it with multiplication. Minus 4 times b, which is 2 cubed plus 1. Again, if you didn't want to write the parentheses around there, you could use a multiplication sign, but as long as you realize only the 2 has the exponent of the 3. Okay, if it was a -2, you absolutely would want that in parentheses. So here I need to do 3 times 2, which is 6. 6 squared is 36. So there I kind of took 2 steps at once. I did 3 times 2, which is 6. 6 squared is 36. You don't square each of those separately. 2 to the third is 8. 4 times 8 is 32. So 36 minus 32, and then don't forget the plus 1. So our final answer for that one is 5. Again, we have something inside the parentheses being squared. So parentheses, W is negative 4 minus V, which is 1. All of that is squared. Plus 2 times V, which is 1, minus 7 times W, which is negative 4. Negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5. So we have negative 5 in parentheses squared. That should be positive 25. So again, if you feel comfortable crossing that out and putting negative 5, that's fine, but you have to remember to keep that negative 5 in parentheses. Negative 5 squared is positive 25. Plus 2 times 1 is 2, minus 7 times negative 4 is negative 28. So minus negative really becomes plus positive. Some of you might get used to seeing that this is really like negative 7 times negative 4, so you would get positive 28, so you could make it a plus sign right away. Either way, now we're down to all addition, so 25 plus 2 plus 28 should give us 55. So now we'll go ahead and try the odd ones on the back. So starting with number 9. We have 3 times C, which is negative 3 squared. Again, only the negative 3 is what is being taken to the second power, so that's what should be in the parentheses. Minus negative 3 times negative 2. So I ended up putting those in parentheses just because there's all kinds of negatives. You could have done negative 3, negative 2 like that in parentheses if that's easier. Plus 7 times negative 2, which is in parentheses squared. So again, the first step is to just rewrite the problem, but put your numbers in place of the variables. So I'm going to bring down 3 times negative 3 squared is 9, minus negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. I can do that right away. Plus 7 times negative 2 squared is 4. Remember, you have to get rid of everything except addition or subtraction before you can add or subtract. So we need to do 3 times 9 is 27, minus 6, plus 7 times 4 is 28. Now we can just work straight across left to right. 27 minus 6 plus 28 gives us 49. These last few are pretty tricky, so make sure you take it step by step. So number 11, we have 2 times A, which is 3, times B, which is 12. So I just put each one in parentheses separately. You don't need parentheses. You can just use the multiplication sign if that's easier. 7 times 12. So I'll use some parentheses, some multiplication sign so you can see the difference. Minus A, which is 3 squared, times B, which is 12. So remember, when you have a big fraction, you need to get the whole top down to one number and the whole bottom to one number before you divide. So across the top, we have 2 times 3 times 12, all multiplication, and we end up with 72. On the bottom, we start with 7 times 12, which is 84, minus 3 squared is 9. 9 times 12 gives us 108. So again, you cannot just type that right into your calculator. You need to get the bottom down to one number. So we would end up with 72 on the top still over negative 24. Then we can divide and end up with negative 3 as our final answer. So again, plug it in, get the top down to one number, the bottom down to one number, and then finally divide. Same thing with number 13. 28 minus 4 times y, which is negative 5 squared, all over x, which is negative 8, times y, which is negative 5, minus 2 times negative 8 squared. So this one I did all parentheses with all those negatives in there. Again, it looks really, really tricky, so you need to just do one thing at a time. So when we look at the top, I'm going to leave the 28 minus 4 times negative 5 squared is 25. Make sure that's positive 25. Negative 8 times negative 5 is positive 40, minus 2 times negative 8 squared is positive 64. So 4 times 25 is 100. Again, you cannot subtract. You have to multiply first. You have to get it all the multiplication and division needs to go away before you add or subtract. So 28 minus 100 is negative 72. On the bottom, same thing. We need to multiply 2 times 64, which is 128. 40 minus 128 is negative 88. Just a reminder that if you try to use negatives in your ABC button, negative 72, ABC, negative 88, it is not going to work. So you need to remember that a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Then you can simplify 72 over 88. And we get 9 over 11. Finally, our last one deals with fractions. 3/4 times 2/9 minus 1/6 times negative 4. Again, if you want to put parentheses instead, you can do that. You can also put over 1 if you want to think of it as a fraction. But again, you can just plug these right in. Even though you can probably see that things cancel, again, you can do that, or you can just type it in. 3/4 times 2/9 gives us 1/6. 1/6 times negative 4. Okay, 1/6 times negative 4 gives us negative 2/3. So minus negative 2/3. If you want to type the minus negative, you can. Otherwise, just make it a plus. So we have 1/6 plus 2/3. And that ends up with 5/6 for our final answer. So again, if you end up with a fraction, that's fine. Just make sure that it is simplified.